So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about roadblocks, some roadblocks to effective communication. What I encourage you to do now is to get a pen, a paper, or whatever electronic device you have where you can take notes and really get this down, because I'm going to cover several bullets, and they are major roadblocks to effective communication. You know, everybody can communicate. I'm going to give you a minute to get a pen and paper or whatever device you have to be able to take some notes. And while you're looking for that, I'm going to say this, that, you know, everybody communicates. It's the foundation. Communication is the foundation for all relationships between people. Communication, this is how we do. How else would we be able to have a relationship with another person unless there is some form of communication? Even animals communicate with each other. They may not talk like we do, of course, but there is communication going on. So language, communication is the foundation. And so we're always communicating. Our daily lives are filled with one communication experience after another. And wouldn't you rather have more positive communication experiences than negative? I was listening to a show on NPR, National Public Radio, the other day about how communication is such a huge issue between people in general. Marriages are quickly dissolved many times because of poor communication, and it's so sad. This is why I'm staying on this, because I know that everybody needs this information. Everybody needs to be mindful of how they communicate. Just take note of how you communicate. I encourage you to do that. You know, take a moment to ask yourself, how are my experiences when I'm communicating with other people? You know, what kind of results do I get when I'm trying to communicate things with those that I love, people on my job even? You know, how effective am I? What kind of things do I do? What kind of things do I say? Just kind of for the next several days, just if you would, just take note. Be mindful of some of the things that you say, and just take a mental note as to, you know, what were perhaps some of the reasons why a particular conflict may not have been resolved. Take note for yourself. You know, it's quick to say, well, they weren't listening to me. They may not have, but just because a person may not be listening to you, we always have to be mindful of ourselves and what could we have done to make it different. Now, if you've done everything that you know to do and you did the best you could, then you did the best you could. But it's always good to do an inventory of ourselves, and this is all I'm encouraging all of you to do, is to just take a mental note of your communication skills and the way you typically do, and see if there might be something that you need to do differently. So I'm going to jump right into the roadblocks. I hope that you have a pen and paper handy or something that you can take notes with, because I think that this is very good information. A couple of the things are I've said already, but I'm going to give some examples of each one of them as I go along. So the first thing is bad timing, and I've already mentioned that. Bad timing. Again, title this Roadblocks to Effective Communication. Roadblocks, to effective communication. First note, bad timing. And I've said this a little bit earlier about timing. Bad timing, let me give you an example. This is a good one. I'm a woman, and I know there are a lot of women listeners, and women typically, we tend to be a little bit more verbal, and we tend to be a little bit more emotional in terms of we want to get whatever it is we want to say out. And it tends to make most women feel better just by getting it out. And a lot of times we're not mindful of when we're doing it. We just want to get it done because it's on our minds and we want to get it out right then and there. Well, say for instance, if you're married, or if you might be in some type of, in a relationship, and you might be at a sports event, and you thought of something that needs to be addressed, and it's been on your mind real heavily, and I'm talking to us women right now, and it's been on your mind really heavily, and you want to get it out. You want to get it resolved because it's bothering you. And though you're at a sporting event, you might be enjoying the sporting event, but it hits you right then and there, and you want to get it out. You want to talk to them about the roof, or plumbing, or something that needs to be done, or going on a trip, whatever. It's something that you want to talk about because it's been bothering you, and you're at a sporting event, and your guy is there, and they're enjoying themselves, and they're into the game, and you bring up something, honey, I was just thinking, we really need to get this done, and we really need to do this, and then you start asking, what about that? Well, that might actually be bad timing. And what do you think is going to happen if you bring something like that up at that time? You're going to get hit with, first off, a look of, what in the world? Now? Do we have to talk about this now? Ladies, have you heard that before? So, bad timing, that's just an example. Another example might be if somebody may be feeling pretty down. And this goes back into reading body language. And somebody might be, not quite their normal self. And you can kind of pick up on it a little bit. And that they're not quite themselves, but, they hadn't said anything. They haven't told you that something's wrong. But there is something wrong, and you don't really pick up on it. And you go into a subject matter that requires a great deal of thought, or something that they just don't have the mental energy to deal with at that time. Well, that could be bad timing. Here again, this is where the listening, that's why I've harped on that so much, that body language, we have to pay attention to it, because it may not be the right time to talk about certain things when you read a person's body language that says that, now is really not a good time. It may be that time should be best spent on what it is that you're picking up from that individual before you get off your chest, whatever it is that you are trying to say or get done. It goes back to, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It goes back to putting somebody else's needs above your own. So the Bible tells us all of these things to do. We have a tendency to spiritualize it and take it out of day-to-day living and practical interactions with one another. But it's very simple that we, follow this basic principle that's in the Bible, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So bad timing, we have to be mindful of that. Asking too many questions. It's another roadblock. Asking too many questions. An example of that might be, well, say for instance, you're talking to somebody, and you have something that you've brought up, and it's a particular issue, and the person is trying to get an understanding of what it is that you brought up, and you continuously are asking them questions about this, that, and the third, and they're still trying to figure out what it is that you're really trying to say. this goes back to, here again, listening, paying attention to the cues that that person may be giving you simply by their silence. You may think that they're not paying attention, or that they're not really listening to you or interested in what you're saying, and they're silent, but their silence may very well be that they're just trying to keep up with you, and they can't get the first question answered because you keep coming at them with the question, one question after the next. So that's a roadblock, and the person just shuts down. It's almost like a computer. If you've got like an older computer and you're clicking on the mouse, and every mouse click is a command. It's telling that computer to do something, and it's trying to keep up with every command that you've given, and it will lock up. And so that's kind of how a person can do. A person can shut down because they can't follow you. You keep asking so many questions, they can't answer the first. And sometimes people, they're not perhaps as quick to speak in terms of being able to respond as quickly as you would like for them to. They're trying, but they may not be able to keep up at the pace that you normally speak or communicate. And they're doing the best they can. So, asking too many questions, that's just one example, can really be a major roadblock. Giving commands. Giving commands is, I guess, a good example of giving commands is when you're talking to somebody. It's kind of like the example that I just used with the computer, and every mouse click is a command. You're telling the computer something that you need done. It's the same thing with a person, with giving commands. It could be, look at me when I'm talking to you. Chances are, if you come at a person with that tone, here again, that's a verbal, and it's also a nonverbal form of communication. If you have a command, look at me when I'm talking to you, or talk to me. You're not talking. Well, speak up. Well, how come you can't answer a simple question? And it's a command. That's going to be a major roadblock. That person is going to shut down because your tone of voice, for one thing, has caused either frustration or anger or a little bit of both, and they're gonna shut down. They're trying to keep up. They would like to perhaps even talk to you, really want to, but the approach that you're coming at them, it's just really, they're not feeling it. They're not able to keep up, and they shut down. So giving commands is just not gonna work. I must say, even with giving commands, is giving demands. Okay, demands, demands. So it's like giving commands and giving demands. When you are talking to somebody and there's something that you want done, or there's something that you want to say. Let me give an example of something. Something comes to mind as I'm talking about that particular subject when it comes to demands and commands. Earlier I talked about how it's best to come at a person with I get the feeling that, or I am wondering if, these types of opening phrases. That's a I message, is what us counselors and us social workers refer to as when it comes to communicating. But if your I message is, I want you to do this and I want you to do that, and if it comes with that kind of tone, if your I message is a demanding one, well, guess what? It's going to be a roadblock, and that's going to shut things down. So let's be very clear that I messages should not be a demand in a demanding tone. It could be a request is best. A request is best. If you can remember that, a request is best. How about, I would like it if you would look at me when I'm talking to you, instead of, I wish you'd look at me. You see the difference in the tone. You're going to get a better response. So those iMessages need to be requests when it comes to something you might want them to do for you. You might want them to start doing, or whatever it is. Just remember that a request is best. So, going to go on here to one more here, well, two more probably. Telling not to interrupt. And then the next bullet is interrupting. So the fourth bullet here is telling not to interrupt. And then the fifth one is interrupting. Now let me explain the difference. Telling not to interrupt. Well, an example of this might be, for one thing, if you tell somebody, there's a way to do it, okay? Say for instance, here again, you're trying to get something across about something that you feel like is a conflict and you want to get the issue resolved. If you start off with a person and you all are talking and you tell them now, don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking. If you come at it, here again, it goes back to tone. See how everything is just really, I'm telling you, tone and timing is so key. I believe that tone has so much to do with a lot of the communication issues, because tone actually is the attitude in which a person is talking to you. And if you have a lot of attitude in the tone of your voice, the way that it sounds, the way that it's coming across, your body language, if all of that is attitude, well, guess what? You're going to be met with attitude and nothing is going to be resolved. So to tell a person, don't interrupt me when I'm talking to you, well, you're going to shut them down because you've come at them with an attitude that it's all about what you're saying, and what I have to say doesn't matter. If you want to get something resolved, there's an issue going on, what you have to do is, what I suggest you do is say, for a moment, if you could just bear with me and let me get some of these things out that I really, it's been on my heart to say, and it's been on my mind, and I really would appreciate it if you would not interrupt me for just a moment.